Fall has arrived, my friends, and that means sweatshirts and awesome B-roll. Hope you guys enjoyed that little B-roll segment. I filmed that just last week when I got home, and I was like, whoa, fall has arrived, so I went out and got some sick shots. I also got some really neat photos too, which you can see if you're following me at JosiahGV on Instagram. And I mean, if you're not, are you even subscribed? Today I just wanted to go ahead and go over my 5 favorite tips for getting good B-roll. And not just good B-roll, tasty B-roll. B-roll that makes you want to cuddle up with your favorite sweatshirt and beverage of your choice and hug YouTube, if YouTube was an entity that you could hug. Alright, so tip number 1 is to make sure your shots are smooth. This is a pretty basic one, but it can be hard to do, especially if you're shooting handheld without a gimbal or Steadicam. Now, if you use a gimbal or Steadicam, obviously that's the best thing to do. However, sometimes setting up a gimbal and Steadicam can be annoying when you just want to go out and shoot something, and going running gun handheld can be much more enjoyable, and that's usually how I prefer to shoot. So when shooting handheld, there's a couple different things you can do to minimize shake. The main one is to shoot in slow motion, and that's assuming you have a camera that supports slow motion. Most of them do. And even if your camera doesn't shoot slow motion, you can always just shoot 30 FPS and then slow that down to 24 FPS, and that will give you some slow motion, which can help to smooth out some of those little jitters. But of course, the slower you go, the smoother it will look. My T4i can only shoot up to 60 FPS, and that's at a downgraded resolution of 720p, but I actually shot that entire sequence in 720p, and I actually don't think it looks that bad. And obviously, there's some aliasing and things that you can see artifacts from shooting 720p. However, I would take smooth shots over high detailed shaky shots, if that makes sense. Another thing you can do is make sure to have as many points of contact on your camera as possible. So always use both hands, and if you have a neck strap, you can always put that around your neck and sort of balance it off of that. Also, when you do your movements, try not to actually walk when you do your movements if you can avoid it. Try just actually spreading your legs and sort of leaning in and out of the movement, and that will sort of help you not have any jitteries from walking. Not have any shake from walking. Tip number 2 is to have a wide variety of shots. The basic idea is that you don't want to have a bunch of shots that all look the same, because that will make a very uninteresting edit. So you want to make sure you have a wide variety of shots, meaning you want some wide shots, some close-up shots, some medium shots, and you also want to have a variety of movements, so push-ins, pull-outs, arcs, rotates, tilts, basically as many different types of movements that you can come up with. Now, I say that, but as you can see in my last B-roll, I had tons of push-ins and pull-outs, and that's kind of the feeling, the vibe that I was going for. But I also had some locked-off shots as well as some weird tilty shots. So I try to spice it up a little bit, even if the majority of my shots may be a similar movement. You know, some of them are really tight, close shots, and some of them are really wide. So you just want to make sure you have a variety of shots. When you go to edit, you have lots of options. The main thing you don't want your edit to be is predictable. You always want to make sure the audience is always on the edge of the seat waiting to see what's going to happen next. Tip number 3 is to shoot through things. You saw me doing a lot of this in that last edit because I really wanted to bring the audience into the location, so I had a lot of the camera moving through things. This can be a great way to sort of bring your audience into the location that you're shooting at. In my example, I had leaves going in front of the camera and sometimes having the camera go through and around trees. I also had one shot that I really love. It's sort of coming out of a log, which I think turned out really cool. So just try to look at your scene and find ways to create depth. You know, what can you have your camera moving through? Also, another great tip for selling this effect can be using wide angle lenses. I shot the majority of that entire edit on my 18-55 at 18 millimeters so that all my movements would be really exaggerated. So for example, when I pulled my camera past that tree, it was a really wide angle shot. That tree felt like it was right next to you, just swinging right past. So using wide angle lenses can be a great way to sort of add that immersion factor. Also, it can make small movements look like really big movements, so that can be really great when you're trying to minimize shake, when you only want to do slight leans. And if you use a wide angle lens, that slight lean will seem like a much larger movement than maybe it actually is. Tip number 4 is shooting in reverse to help you nail focus. This is a trick I learned a while back when you shoot with manual focus, and the basic idea is that you frame up your shot how you want your shot to end and be dead focus, and then what you can do is pull out away from your object, and then later in post, reverse the clip so you're pushing in and you nail focus perfectly on that push-in. You can do the same thing in reverse pushing out, but it doesn't have to be a push-in. You could apply that same technique to really any type of movement you wanted to. My last tip for shooting tasty B-roll is to work on sound design. Sound design is often really overlooked when doing B-roll. Most people just put it in a music track, edit to the beat, and call it good. But if you really want to bring your quality of B-roll to the next level, please focus on sound design. You can see by finding perfect sound effects for each different clip can really help bring out the texture of the things you're filming. I layered a whole lot of different sound effects over top of these clips, and I think it really does help bring the audience into the location and sort of hear all the sounds they would hear of these different objects and not just be sort of a spectator far off watching it. I got most of these sound effects just from searching on YouTube for sound effects. Pretty basic. I also got a couple of them from the same place I get my music, which is Audio Blocks, or I guess they're called Storyblocks now. But another really great way to get sound effects is to go out and make them yourself. But you can also find a lot online, so that's definitely not required. Also, a quick bonus tip while we're talking about sound design. When you're editing to the beat of a song, make sure every single cut isn't just on every single downbeat of the song. That can get, like I said earlier, really predictable, and that's what you don't want. Instead of syncing your cuts with the beat, try to sync movements in your shots with the beat. For example, in this shot, I have some leaves sort of brushing past the camera, and I actually lined up when the leaf lets go of the camera at the same time as a bass hit with the song. And that just added a lot of power to those leaves being brushing off the camera. So you don't always have to cut right on the downbeat of a song. Otherwise, you'll have very predictable cuts and your audience will get bored. Well, that about does it for my 5 B-roll tips. If you have any tips of your own, please leave them down in the comment section below. I'd also really encourage you to try out techniques different than the ones in this video. You know, start experimenting, because that's where you're gonna find your style and what you make the best. So take these tips into consideration, but don't see them as hard, fast rules, just ideas really that you can implement into your own projects when you feel it useful. I'm Josiah, thanks for watching. Nailed it. I don't know about you guys, but I am really excited for fall vibes. Also, follow me on Instagram.